Okay, so now we're going to turn to the third element of the Capital Absorption Framework, the enabling environment. And in the world of finance, people often operate with tunnel vision. They are thinking about identifying the enterprise they want to invest in, doing their diligence, assessing the competitors and the customers and the suppliers, but they're not thinking about the policy environment, the civic environment, the worker services groups. And so this has a much broader view of when to consider something investable. So can you speak about what is the enabling environment and how does that function in making these decisions?
Sure. So the Capital Absorption Framework is really focused on the system that produces the deal. Because what we start from is the idea that no one transaction alone is going to meet the ambition of a community for what it wants for itself. And so we're really in the business of systems change. And in that business, the deals contribute to the shared priority, but they also contribute to an understanding of what the system produces or what is needed in the system to produce more and better. And so the enabling environment for us is all the contextual factors in the ecosystem that either make the deal doable or make it harder to do. So we look at policies like zoning. We look at institutional practices like how do we prioritize subsidies or when are our application deadlines. We look at the resource flows in a particular community. Where is subsidy going? Where should it be going in order to meet the shared priority? We look at things like relationships among different actors, skills and capacities that are present or absent, all the things that you see here. Data, the use of data. We also look at who's talking to whom in which kind of collaborative platform and who's bringing the bagels. So it's the whole thing. The important thing about the enabling environment is that we've really seen what a difference it makes when people are conscious about changing it. And it is subject to change. So we worked with a group in the Bay Area, and they realized that people were making independent decisions about deals. And so this one got money over here and this one got money over there, but nobody got money enough to get all the way through. And so they created muffin meetings. And they met regularly once a month, and all the funding sources would talk about where they were going to put their subsidies and how they were going to work together so that they would get deals over the finish line. So that's a great example of what it looks like. Another example, again with the purple line, is when we started looking at what it would take to achieve the no net loss of affordable housing, we realized that there was a zombie policy that had been put on the books. It was there for 5 years. It had never been implemented, that gave the county a really powerful right to step into a transaction with a private sector buyer and go for that price and maintain the affordability of the building. So instead of buildings getting bought and flipped to market rate, the county could come in and take the building for the same price and keep the units affordable. But it had never been implemented, right? And so what the intervention was in this case was a modest grant to do an RFP for affordable housing developers to say, hey, you interested? If we have an opportunity like that, you want it? And they got more than a dozen responses from qualified developers. And then they wrote a manual of what does it take to use the limited period of right of first refusal to actually make this stuff happen. And lo, within a very short period of time, they exercised their right a couple of times, and 1,200 units have been preserved. So there can be really powerful interventions in the enabling environment that add up to big changes in what the community is able to accomplish.
So the system that a community is operating in is big, and I imagine it's not always the case that it's friendly to the community's needs. Can you speak a little bit about the distinction between the enabling environment and the disabling environment, perhaps?
We've done a lot of work, interestingly, with blue places in red states. And so people have had to really pick their battles. And when we talk about the enabling environment, we're not always talking about the political environment, right? So there are actors like hospitals and health systems or other civic institutions that generally are not at the table for community investment discussions. And in the unfriendlier environments, the focus may very well be on who's in philanthropy, who's in the hospital and health system that could be an ally, who else can we find in other jurisdictions that might be interested in what we're doing. And so people have been very creative about working around a hostile political climate because it turns out that that's just one of the levers.
So if you go back to something like Appalachia that you're speaking about, where at least at the beginning, it didn't seem like there was a lot going on there. What does it look like with this question of the enabling environment when it doesn't look like there's a lot there yet?
Well, what was interesting in Appalachia was that because of scarcity, the things that were going on, and some of them were small and some of them were bigger, they all knew each other. Mm-hmm. And it was really a question of overcoming distance and overcoming competition in a kind of mindset of scarcity to get people to work together. And so when they actually sat down and said, you know, if we stop competing against each other to look for external resources, and instead we say, we share a common purpose and we want you to invest together with us, they were able to bring into the region resources that they never would have been able to access alone. So what we have found, and this has been time and again, is that more is going on under the surface than people think. Mm-hmm. Very often there isn't a concerted effort to identify those things, but we really believe strongly that you build on assets. And identifying what those assets are, they don't always look like the traditional things you would think of. It's less about being a checklist of, do we have a community development financial institution, yes or no? It's more about who can we find with the skills and the attitude to come and help us, and then we think sometimes about stone soup, right? You bring the potato, I bring the carrot, soon we have soup.